Hey people, this is Ruben and this is part 2 of our interview with Nathan Reimche-Vu, an awesome sales and marketing specialist. If you missed part 1 of this interview, I highly recommend you go watch it first. Tons of insights there. Let's go.
Now, the next stage is the proposal stage, but yeah, I had a question for you which would sound differently, but now that I'm thinking about it, I would ask a different question about proposals. So, given the process that you described, do you even do proposals, or are you the kind of person that closes the deal on the call?
So it's going to depend. So with proposals, I'm gonna push to close the deal on the call itself, in the meeting itself, right? I'm gonna try and do that, right? At the same time, people a lot of times need time to think about things, right? But the reality is that a lot of times they just use that as a stall. They don't really need, they could make the decision if they wanted to. They're just being like, oh, send me a proposal to my email, right? So I can go over it with my wife. And you have to figure out how to overcome that, right? Because that's just a stall for them not wanting to make a decision right now, right? That's 9 times out of 10, they could make a decision right now, right? But sometimes, I know I'm this way. Sometimes I just can't let myself make a decision on the first call. It's just, I can't let myself do it, right? And so you have to be empathetic to that. So what you want to do in your proposal process is like, yes, when you're on the call, make sure you try and close the deal, right? And there's a bunch of techniques that I can go into and we'll probably go into later. But in your proposals specifically, you want to take as much information that you shared with them in your meeting, and you want to put all of that into the proposal. That's really important because they're going to take this proposal and they're going to show it to other people. They're going to show it to the people who are around them that they trust. And you want that to be as rock solid as possible. Another thing that I would recommend is that when there are other parties that need to help them make the decision, if at all possible, get those on your call as well.
Right.
So the way I do that is I say, hey, Dr. Jim, is there anyone other than yourself that would be involved in making this decision today? Right? If Dr. Jim says no, and I do this at the beginning of the call, and the reason why is because if Dr. Jim says, no, I'm the only decision maker, then I'm protecting myself from him saying, oh, I need to go talk to my wife or I need to go talk to my assistant, right? So that's not even a problem anymore because Dr. Jim always said, no, I'm the only decision maker. So I'll ask that question, Dr. Jim, is there anybody other than yourself that's involved in making these types of decisions? I just want to make sure I'm talking to the right people. That way I can answer the right questions for you all. I don't want this time to be a waste of your time. So I just want to make sure we have the right people on the call. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. Thanks a lot. So, the next stage is demos. Do you do demos, or is it again everything on the call?
Demos I believe in demos, and this is why. You can talk as much as you want, but there's a difference between talking about a product and showing the product. There's a difference between just talking about it in hyperbolic terms, or I'm just explaining a bunch of things that he can't even see, right? And for the most part, especially when you're talking to dentists, or really anybody, really, if you can't show them what you're talking about, it's not even real. So you need to have a demo. You need to have demo websites. You need to have, that's a critical part of your sales process. If you don't have a demo and they can't see anything, then it's like, you're trying to sell air, right? Which you can do, it is possible, but at the same time, if you want to increase how many people you're closing, you want to introduce a demo. And here's the interesting thing. If you can introduce a demo of one of their competitors, that's golden. Because what you do is you unlock something where they're like, oh wow, my competitor's doing this, right? I better do this too. And that's going to push you even farther down to closing that sale. So I would say inside your pitch, use demo websites, preferably demo websites of people in their industry that they're competing with. Okay. Maybe not direct, like maybe not the, office down the street, right? But people that they're like, that you show them demos of people that are in their field in their industry that they know who they are, and they're like, oh wow, if this person's doing it, I better do it too. That's how I see demos. So it's a combination of like showing and telling versus just talking, and then showing them the things that unleash a little bit of like, oh wow, I better get on this. It creates a little bit of urgency.
Thanks, Nathan. That was really, really informative. But the question was from the different angle, actually. The question is, what is the number one thing to avoid during a demo?
What's the number one thing to avoid during the demo? Okay, this is extremely important. When you are demoing your platform, you want to make sure your platform is fast. There's nothing worse. Okay, ask me how I know. There is nothing worse than going into a demo and your site doesn't work.
Right.
I had this happen to me many times where we would be hosting websites on other platforms. I won't name any, but some of them have the color blue in them, and others, have, your parent. You want to demo product. You want to have a foundational, tech stack that is strong and stable. Okay, because if you're inside your demo and your demo doesn't load, okay, right, you're done.
Gotta be prepared,
went through your
right?
entire process. You went through your entire process of prospecting, researching, contacting. You spent money to get in front of somebody, and then that demo is not stable. You just wasted that entire money, time, energy that you spent. So the number one thing I would avoid is make sure your tech stack is solid so that your demos go off without a hitch. And then, that's the number one thing. If you ask for one thing, that's the thing. That is the thing.
Sure. That's awesome. Next stage. Well, this is not so much of a stage. It's a process. It's a state of mind. Objections, right?
Yeah.
Salespeople's favorite part, right? Objections, addressing objections. So the question is, what skill do you need to overcome any objection? Is there such?
Number one thing I want to talk about when it comes to objections, especially when you're selling over the phone or you're selling over a Zoom call like this, is just remember that I think a lot of times salespeople get scared because they're like, oh my goodness, this is an objection. I don't know the answer to it. And one thing that's helped me a ton is to understand that there's no one thing that's going to ruin your sale forever. So there's no one thing you can say wrong. There's no one thing that's going to just ruin this sale. Yeah, a variety of things over time is going to make it so you can't close the sale. There's no one thing that you're going to do that is going to make it so that you can never close this sale. So that's the one thing. Number two is the more you sell, the more you're able to predict what those objections are going to be. And so every single time you hear an objection, you want to write that down, okay? And after your presentation, after your appointment, you want to go and you want to look at what you wrote down. You're like, that's a new objection. How am I going to overcome it, okay? And the best way to get good at overcoming objections is to write every single one of them down and practice overcoming them. It's going to take time because in many different industries, the objections are different. But in the same way, it's almost like they're all the same. In the sense, most of the time, you either have an objection about money, okay? Maybe they don't have the money right now. Maybe they need whatever. It's an objection about money. It could be an objection about decision-making, meaning they are not the decision maker. Someone else needs to help them make this decision. So they have the money, but someone else needs to help them make the decision. But as we were talking about earlier, you should have already predicted that and solved that problem beforehand. And then number three is maybe they're just not sold on the product yet. They're not sold on let's say you're selling web design. They're not sold on your actual design yet. There's something about the product that they don't necessarily like, right? Mm-hmm. And so those are the three categories that most of the time your objections are going to fall into. Number one, they don't have money. Now you want to make sure that's not too much of an objection. So that's why you do your research. Number two, they're not the decision maker. Okay. So They're not the one people making the decision. You need to be able to predict that though. That's why in the beginning of your call, you ask them, hey, is there anybody other than you that would be involved in making decisions like this? Okay, so you need to be able to predict that. So, but most of the time it's money. They're not the decision maker. And then the last one, usually the last one is somewhat of the hardest one to overcome, and that's the product itself. If there's something specific about the product itself that they don't like, right? And that's the one where right after your demo, where you've shown them the product, they shouldn't have too many objections. But if they do have objections to the product, let's say they're like, maybe I don't know if this website's gonna be easy for me to edit. I don't know if I can change the image on the homepage very well, or am I gonna have to call you to do that for me, right? These are some examples of product-based objections. And so when you're inside, when you get that objection, what you wanna do is you don't wanna just tell them that, oh yes, we can do that, or oh yes, it's very easy for you to edit. What you wanna do is you wanna say, hey, let me show you. When you wanna edit a blog post on your website, this is what you do. You click this link, you log in, you type in whatever you want to type, and it's done, right? And if you can overcome those product objections in a very physical way by showing them instead of just telling them, that's how I overcome those objections. Because 9 times out of 10, you got it. So, but the more you do this, the more you're going to be able to predict what those objections are, and that's the sign of a professional. So that's what I think.
Awesome, thanks a lot. And last but not least, closing the sale. Now, here's the question. What are some creative ways of closing a sale? Do you have them?
So basically, when it comes to closing the sale, this is the most important part of your process. Nothing else matters unless you can get this right. If you don't get this right, you just wasted a bunch of time and money and energy. So you have to get this right. You have to study on how are you going to close the sale. Most of the time, sales don't close for only a few reasons. Number one, they're not liquid. Okay. So what that means is they just don't have the money right now. Like they just don't have it, right? So you want to make sure that you're talking to people that are liquid, that have money in the bank, that can pay for your services, right? If you're not talking to people who are liquid, you should solve that problem earlier. And the number one way that I like to transition from the sales process of me presenting everything and all that kind of thing to actually closing is a very simple way. And I'll say, hey, Dr. Jim, have I shown you enough in this website system that you could justify making a purchase, or you could justify implementing this into your office, right? So I just asked him a simple question. Have I shown you enough that you could justify doing this? If he says yes, then you're like, let's go. How about this? What would you like to do? Would you like to? And then if he says yes to that question, I always want to give him two options when it comes to pay. I say, hey, would you like to pay up front everything and save 20%? Or would you like to split it into 2 payments where, half is due today and half is due when your website is finished, right? So now I'm asking him, I'm giving him options when it comes to payments. I'm giving him options. I'm like, hey, would you like to do everything up front today, save 20%, right? Or would you like to split it up into 2 payments and we collect half today and half a month from now? That's how I go into closing it. So transitioning from overcoming objections and selling and your pitch and all that kind of thing into closing is very important. And the easiest way to do it is just basically, Dr. Jim, have I shown you enough that you could justify doing this? And either he's going to say yes, and you just go in and say, here's payment options, let's move forward. Or he says no, and you have to circle back around and go, hey, what are your objections? What have I not shown you that you need to see? So that is literally the way that sales are closed.
Thank you, Nathan. This was really informative and helpful. I'm sure our viewers will love you sharing your experience with them. Thank you so much for your time, and take care.
Yeah, thank you very much. And for everybody who's watching, if you're not using 10Web right now to basically massively speed up your development cycles. If you're not using 10Web to massively speed up your development cycles, you definitely need to do it, all right? Because it's changed our business. We can build a website in half the time that it used to take us. So I just want to tell that to everybody before I hop off. But I really appreciate you, and we can't wait to talk again soon.
Okay, thank you.
All right, take care, bye.
Okay, that wraps it up. I hope it was useful. If it was, don't forget to give us a like. And if you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, and I'll see you in another video.